the battle to prompt Chancellor Rachel Reeves to hike the draconian income tax personal allowance from its minimum of £12,570 to £20,000 has reached a pivotal milestone. The online campaign saw a surge as its petition on Parliament's official site rocketed in popularity. Last week, it smashed through the crucial 10,000 signature threshold required for the Treasury to issue an official reply. The momentum hasn't slowed. As of today, it's on track to exceed a remarkable 50,000 supporters, halfway to securing a parliamentary debate, meaning Rachel Reeves would have to face Parliament on the issue. Petition mastermind Alan Frost passionately called on the Treasury, raise the income tax personal allowance from £12,570 to £20,000. We think this would help low earners to get off benefits and allow pensioners a decent income. We think it is abhorrent to tax pensioners on their state pension when it is over the personal allowance. We also think raising the personal allowance would lift many low earners out of benefits and inject more cash into the economy, creating growth. Taxpayers currently hit the 20% basic tax when they earn over £12,570, and the £50,270 threshold ushers them into the 40% bracket, both of which have been on ice since 2021. This freeze is predicted to fatten the Treasury's coffers by a cool £1.2 billion by the time it thaws in 2028. This so-called fiscal drag captures increasing numbers of taxpayers in its grasp, compelling them to pay at higher rates. With the persistence of the lower £12,570 threshold, it means those with slimmer wallets are shouldering a disproportionately heavy burden. The petition has gained traction, now amassing 100,000 signatures, which could compel a parliamentary debate about the stagnant personal tax allowance policy maintained by successive governments. This inaction is seen as increasing the tax load on individuals. The Office for Budget Responsibility projects a considerable impact due to these freezes. By 2025-26, roughly 1.3 million more people will find themselves liable for income tax, with a further 1 million catapulted into higher tax brackets. Martin Lewis, the founder of MoneySavingExpert.com, highlighted the fiscal snare, saying, "Imagine someone who currently earns £12,000 now. Because earnings do tend to increase each year, in a couple of years' time they'll earn £13,000. But because the thresholds are frozen, they will now start to pay 20% tax on some of their earnings." He also pointed out how this stagnant threshold strategy serves as a revenue stream for the Treasury. And in fact, what freezing the threshold does is that it means no matter what you earn, as your earnings increase, a bigger proportion of your earnings goes on tax. And that's how the Chancellor makes money from it. Last year, Rachel Reeves' budget confirmed that national insurance and income tax thresholds across various regions would remain unchanged until April 2028. Victor Bulmer Thomas, in a blog post for the LSE, previously stated that this was disproportionately affecting the poorest people. The distributional impact of this particular stealth tax may come back to bite the administration that imposed it. The reason is that the impact is much more severe on those on lower incomes than those on higher ones. At the end of the fiscal year 2021-22, the median pay of a full-time worker in the UK was £33,374, similar to the example of the individual I used above. The median pay of the bottom decile of full-time workers, the lowest 10%, was £20,691. Using all the same assumptions as above with regard to inflation, wage increases and applying the frozen personal tax allowance, a typical individual in the lowest decile would see their tax bill increase from £1,624 to £2,906. This is a jump in the average tax rate from 7.8% to 10.7%, which is an increase of 37.7%. Furthermore, the basic rate of tax needed to secure the same amount of tax from this individual would have to be 27.7%, a massive increase on the official rate of 20%. No government would survive for long if it transparently imposed tax increases of this magnitude on the poorest in society. Sean Moore from wealth management firm Quilter has highlighted a significant concern for high earners, asserting, "The tax trap between £100,000 and £125,140 is one of the most punishing thresholds in the system. While it is of course a nice problem to have, this is a problem that can stifle ambition as people look for ways to reduce their workload or turn down higher paid roles for fear of finding themselves in the trap." He further cautioned that parents earning over £100,000 face the added disadvantage of losing tax-free childcare benefits and free care hours for young children. For those wishing to challenge this issue, he advises to view and sign up for the petition by clicking here. Here is a summary of internet users' reactions. The tax threshold was frozen to help repay the government debt incurred due to COVID support. Now seeing I didn't get COVID support, I'm okay with the tax cut but not with the debt. So how about those who received aid pays extra taxes and us who didn't gets a raise in allowances? A lesson in those who gets pays, but increases in allowances also has moral hazard as those who gets don't pay. It's important all people contribute towards the state. Otherwise they don't see the cost of inefficient government. Actually the opposite needs to happen. The UK has a very small income tax base, so while many pay no or very little income tax at all, most tax receipts comes from the very highly paid, who are the most mobile and can leave the UK tomorrow. 30% of all income tax paid comes from the highest 1% of earners. So we actually need to broaden the income tax base so most people pay it, and that means abolishing totally the personal allowance. In the rest of Europe you pay tax on everything you earn. Then at long last we will less beholden to the very highly paid and their demands. If it was raised to £20,000 more would pay tax, but it would also cancel out many benefits that are paid, so I believe would save a lot of money. More in pocket, more spent, therefore boosting the economy. Also it should cut back on the staff that administer an overcomplicated system. But Sticky Starmer spending £700,000 going on jolly, he sets a wholly unexceptional bad example. State pensioners are underfunded and on meagre prepaid weekly amounts. The Labour Party selected Chancellor had frozen the meagre tax threshold at £12,500 a year, not a month. As a rent or mortgage is far higher than the pension, savings, earnings are needed to survive without being taxed on the £12,500. As Chancellor Reeves is to face questions from MPs, it's entirely possible the state prepaid pension and tax threshold is past its sell-by date. If not brought up to date, the Chancellor should be recalled, replaced by Labour Party, not the PM, as Reeves was chosen by him. Don't forget the 8% NI employee's contribution on top of the 20% income tax you pay after reaching the princely sum of just over £12,000 a year. That is nearly 1/3 of your wages above £12,000 gone immediately. Why can't they be more honest, save on the admin, and group the two together? How many years since 2011 has the personal tax allowance been frozen? Just restoring it to where it would and should have been would invigorate spending for all those caught in the 20% tax poverty bracket. It's called growth, Ms. Reeves. It is absolutely obscene to tax the state pension that people have paid into all their working lives. To stop the taxable income threshold from rising from the £12,570 below poverty level, with inflation, for 3 years, is criminal. Nobody should pay tax on an income that just maintains an acceptable minimum quality of life. £20,000 is a very low salary these days. So even raising to that amount would represent minimal protection for the poorest in society. What it says about £12,570 I cannot repeat without being cancelled. When I started work in '85, the allowance was £2,045 for a single person. Tax had been reduced from Labour's high of 36% to 30% under Maggie. Wages were about 1/3 of what they are now, so a 6 times increase in the allowance and only 20% tax isn't that bad when you think about it. This is a measure which hits the lowest paid and once again the elderly. There did no need for 20,000, but 15,000 would help so many. The Truss budget is estimated to have cost the country £30 billion due to the mistakes made within it. The Reeves budget has cost £70 billion and rising. Truss was forced out, Labour doubled down and inflict even more damage. We need another GE.